So I want to kind of touch upon a couple random, maybe rapid fire topics. And then I do want to end kind of talking about the recent ebook that you just published. But, just some interesting things that you and I are always talking with others and each other on Twitter about. So what's your take on ice baths? I kind of rip on icing a little bit every now and then on Twitter just because of some of the evidence that's out. But, I've seen you take ice baths. I take ice baths myself. But kind of what's your take on them? Do you use them? When do you use them sort of in relation to your training sessions? And maybe what's the utility that you find in ice baths?
Yeah, I love ice baths, and I think that ice baths are good for two reasons. One is the mental resiliency, being able to sit in through that ice and get through that initial panic where your brain is telling you with every fiber in its being out. Getting through that is something that can just change, that can straight up change someone's life. And I think that they feel good generally for the body. But I am aware that, like, I've certainly read that, like, if you have inflammation and if you're broken down from a big workout, like, that inflammation is helping you heal. So I'm aware that, like, shocking the body and kind of freezing your joints and your limbs and ligaments and things like that, like, maybe it's not the greatest thing. But I don't think it's, like, really having any negative impact that would certainly be outweighing any of the positive impacts.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And again, I mentioned, I'm kind of hard on ice baths because sometimes there is data, to be sure, that I think that may sort of be overblown. In fact, that, like, oh, you want this inflammatory response sort of after you train. If you jump in an ice bath right away, it may attenuate some of the response. But I think overall, when I kind of have really started thinking about it, I'm like, it doesn't erase your training session. It might cause a tiny little bit of, a reduction in an inflammatory response, but, like, is that sacrifice kind of worth it for somebody who needs to recover maybe for the next day's training session? So, but I think that the mental and sort of the resilience of them is definitely something that's super impactful. So, like, put aside maybe the health benefits, because there are people that will claim that the ice baths kind of do things that they might not do, at least from, like, a hormonal endocrine kind of perspective. But just in regards to them being miserable and learning to, like, push through that, I totally am on board at that, like, yeah, take a cold plunge a couple times a week and, like, sit from the neck down, and you'll really learn something about yourself.
Oh, seriously. And I just generally, like, I know that athletes have been doing them forever. Like, NBA players get in after a game. So, like, any negative cannot really be that big of a deal.
No, sure thing. What about caffeine and alcohol? What's your take on caffeine and alcohol? The two most abused drugs in the world.
Yeah, so I don't love caffeine. I love how much I love caffeine. I like coffee a lot. Lately, I have been making an effort to just not have it, like, right when I wake up. So I've been trying to go, an hour, sometimes even two, being awake before having caffeine. But I absolutely like having a coffee, like, mid-morning. I've even been having it mid-afternoon lately. I've switched over to iced coffee a good bit, and I like having that a lot. So I don't think caffeine is bad. I certainly, there's levels to it. So if you're waking up and if you're sucking down coffee and loading it with sugar, first thing to start your day, and then needing a bunch of coffees to get through the day, I think that you've got a bit of an issue that you could probably pull back. But I've gone periods without caffeine. I didn't have any caffeine or coffee on my carnivore diet. So I've kind of played with my intake and measured it out. And there have been times that I limited myself to just 1 cup. Nowadays, like I said, I'm working on kind of backing it up into the morning. So I like just, like, having a little bit of an intention of control around it. But at the same time, like, I love it. And I definitely probably have more than I think. Alcohol, I guess I would just say that, like, over time with my just, like, life goals and interests developing around training and spending time outside and spending time pushing my body physically, I've just grown, like, a natural, I've just lessened my natural interest in drinking. So now at times, when I drink, maybe I'll have a couple beers at a brewery in an afternoon or something like that, or maybe I'll have some wine with dinner. But I'm really cognizant to never drink late into the evening. That's really been easy since I've been fasting for a number of years. Like, once I started fasting, like, it became very obvious that, I wasn't eating past 8, and then all of a sudden, like, going out to the bars until, midnight or whatever, like, that would really screw me up. And I just personally, like, it's very easy for me to see that, like, I am not willing to sacrifice tomorrow for a, quote, better time tonight. And I also don't always think that's a better time anyway. But I don't think that alcohol needs to be like completely removed. Personally, I've just like shifted it up, as well as decreased the frequency a ton. I drink maybe like 2 or 3 times a month. Maybe if my wife and I do a bike ride on a Saturday, we'll go to a brewery. Maybe I'll have a couple beers. Like I said, maybe wine with dinner. I haven't really drank much since I've been really adamant about the low carb diet. So I'm interested to shift to some dry wines I know are preferred, from both Dave Scott and Zach Bitter have suggested those to me, as well as like harder alcohols, I guess, maybe more like a tequila. I don't really drink vodka. I used to drink whiskey a ton, but don't really drink that much anymore. So kind of the same type of deal as coffee is I kind of just play with it and let a lot of it go by feel. I would definitely say that like limiting alcohol is probably undeniably best, but it also doesn't need to be like totally gone.
Yeah, sure. I think limiting it in any case for any outcome is the best way to go. And like caffeine, I think it can sort of be used as like a tool. I mean, I know it's weird to think about it in that way, but it's like, have a couple drinks to have some fun, and like typically during the day, if you can, is better. Cause I'm with you in terms of like, man, alcohol past like 8 p.m. and it'll messes up your sleep, even if it's like one drink. And then if it's any more than that and you're out till 10 or 11, it's pretty brutal. And I think, something that being an endurance athlete sort of, you become more in tune with your body and things like that. But really the effects of alcohol become so much more prominent when you have to wake up and train the next day, because like you just feel like absolute crap. I mean, we had, for an example, we were traveling last weekend, friend's wedding back home in Cincinnati. And, the whole weekend we're going to be drinking. We're going to be out like fairly late and whatever like that. And so I was just waking up solo to run every morning, but I'm just like, oh my God, I do not feel good. I do not want to go out on this run. I mean, motivation-wise, you're kind of sapped. Body-wise, after a couple miles, you're all right. But, I mean, it's just like, if you're training for anything, you're just like, you got to stay accountable to yourself, because you're not going to feel good in the morning. And I think the fact that knowing you're going to feel bad sort of, like you mentioned earlier, makes you not kind of make that sacrifice the night before. You have something holds you accountable the next day. They have to go do.
Absolutely.
And we were at a wedding for.
Yeah, we were at a wedding too recently, and we were talking to a friend we haven't seen in a while since, my wife and I have really gotten into all this endurance stuff. And she asked, like, do you guys still even drink anymore? And my answer was, I thought be casual, how I explained to you how we kind of go about things. And she was like, when I'm hungover, like, I can't even like take my daughter to school, like, for being dramatic, but like, she's like, I can't even take my daughter to school. I'm like, well, yeah, like, I don't know, like, I'm signing up to ride like 50 miles, like, no offense, but taking your daughter to school doesn't sound like a very big deal to me. And like, if that's the type of thing that like you're able to get over that because it's not that big of a deal to just like be operating in day-to-day life, I guess. But like when you start chewing off, long runs like you're doing or whatever it is that we're getting into, like it's like, I don't need anyone to tell me that this is terrible for me.
No, exactly. Your body will let you know.
Yeah.